Fight Club is a critical reflection on the consumer society in which we live and how it affects the most inert individuals. This justifies the main character not have a name to serve as a metaphor for his lack of identity, but also because that history is not only his, but of all dependent on empty consumerism, which in the hope to fill this hole with clothes, cars, mobile phones, and all kinds of superfluous acquisition, lose their own essence to make part of a vicious cycle where we are evaluated for what we have, not for what we are. The protagonist of the film, also called narrator, is a middle-class citizen who has a good job but finds himself stuck in a boring and sameness routine, stating that the days are copies of each other. He has a monotonous life and a job that he hates in a car company whose its function is to investigate accidents and verify if the company is guilty. Although it has a beautiful apartment with all the useless ornaments you can buy, the character is not satisfied with your material achievements. That's because you spend most of your time working in order to support himself, and when he's free don't have anyone to talk to or encouragement to practice some other activity, thus you can only spend your money on goods of consumption. Unnamed, the narrator is the representation of the ordinary citizen who lives for work in order to save your salary to finally spend on things you don't need, but that society pressures you to have it. Because of this vicious cycle, individuals are transformed into mere consumers, numbers, slaves of a system that defines the value and status of each based on that he owns. The narrator's discontent with all scopes of his own life makes him fall in an identity crisis. Even though being professionally successful and financially stable, he lives in constant anguish, which among other things causes you a strong insomnia. He hasn't slept in 6 months. While visiting his doctor, the protagonist tries to say that you wake up in strange places and that you don't know how you got there. The doctor pays no attention and does not prescribe no medicine for him to sleep. Instead, tell the storyteller that the pain is felt in support groups by men who have testicular cancer. In order to try to understand this true pain, the storyteller visits this group. There, you meet Bob, a former champion bodybuilder, who had his testicles removed and developed breasts because of an increase in your hormones. Although this information about Bob is not relevant, the storyteller ends up crying while hugging him, and this crying makes he sleeps like a baby at night. This moment expresses well how the character was still a boy emotionally because Bob here symbolically assumes the figure of a mother. In addition, the men in the group are representations caricatures of modern man referred to as castrated due to lack of rites of passage that turn boys into big men. Go to all other available support groups in town relieves narrator insomnia, until Marla comes up in the cancer group testicular like a tourist. Because your lie reflects on his, the protagonist is now unable to cry and suffers from insomnia again. The narrator, unhappy with the situation, confronts Marla for being a liar, and eventually they come to an agreement, decide to divide the groups among themselves. Analyzing both, it is noticeable that the feeling that plagues them is the extreme loneliness. The narrator, condemned for being inside the system, and Marla, being out, suffer with their respective isolated existences. When met in the support groups, Marla and the protagonist were looking for the same: human contact, honesty, and the possibility to cry on the shoulder of a stranger. The narrator was so destroyed by his solitude, his mental health was so shaken, that unconsciously he ended up creating another personality, a friend with whom he could share everything, a true partner of fight. By contrast, Marla was so helpless. Call someone you just met. In one of the support groups, the narrator finds in his cold and icy inner cave his animal spirit, a penguin. This bird represents the medicine of living in community and adaptation to the new. It symbolizes the increase in socialization for be happy with your mate and faithfulness marital that is basically reminds you to preserve relationships and relationships. Living in society, fidelity, and loyalty in novels. The narrator, after meeting Tyler, needs to adapt to the new, to a different lifestyle and unknown to him. You also need to live in community, first at Fight Club and then at Destruction Project with all those members living in your house. The penguin usually stays close of your group, but sometimes gets lost. Similar to the narrator's initial condition, that despite attending several groups of support, does not fit into any of them, as do not have any of their diseases or addictions. By saying glide, the penguin may be seeing how the narrator leads his life. He always goes with a mass, carried by the tide, without ask or question. Just go like a penguin, it slides. But we can also look at the word as an advice, a perspective. He needs to indulge in a new style of life. Sliding then means following front without looking back. Break free from all that held him and to throw himself. Live for real. Because of his work, the narrator needed travel a lot. Because of this, sometimes not even knew right where it was because of the time zone and from several insomnia. Because they travel a lot in short periods, he constantly lost track of time and was always bored to the point of love your fantasies be occasionally imagine your plane exploding, just to try out some emotion in your life subsequently. We are formally introduced at the airport to Tyler Durden, who before had been shown in 4 punctual moments and almost imperceptible. These moments have the goal not only of prove that Tyler is not a real person, how to prepare us for your grand entrance. So when he finally materializes next to the narrator with an identical briefcase, you already know him, because minutes before Tyler appears on the treadmill boarding at the exact moment the narrators say Tyler Durden emerged from unconscious fear to do something different, to risk it. That is why he is a man without fear. Without distractions, he is free. A guy who doesn't mind saying and live the truth, and one doesn't cling to wealth material, nor does it fit the standards. Notice that Tyler's look is extremely singular. No one dresses in the least like him at all. Even when you wear a formal outfit, your suit, it is different from the ordinary. In this way, we can understand that throughout the time when the protagonist was sleepwalking, who also works part-time as a projectionist and ventures sometimes as a waiter at nights. It should be noted that soap manufactured and marketed by Tyler at U.S. designer stores has a special and ironic symbolism, seen which is made from human fat that he steals from the trash of liposuction clinics. The same soap that leads us to anti-materialism for the actions of the inconsequential Tyler, the same soap that leads us to anti-materialism for the actions of the inconsequential Tyler of the body. Such act demonstrates the illusion of asepsis in consumer society and reaffirms the idea of vicious cycle. A soap made based in the remains of the human body, that is, from of obesity caused by consumerism itself compulsive over and over again. If Fight Club were filmed from a third-person perspective, we would follow a mentally unbalanced man leading a double life. During the day as an office casual worker, and at night as the charismatic leader from a mysterious club. But due to the unreliable narrative in first person in the feature we see Tyler, as that's why we, much less the protagonist, don't we distrust Tyler's true nature. Understandable, because it is strange to the circumstance, but do not understand what is happening, since you only really know Tyler Durden, while the narrator always avoids it. But considering that both share the same body, the person with whom Marla relates is moody, emotionally unavailable, and stupid with her. You are not suffering from personality disorder. Maybe from Marla, Tyler/narrator was exactly the kind of guy she was used to coming out, someone who was good enough in bed to be worth the emotional investment continuous. That is why, despite the protagonist's actions sound conflicting or contradictory, the character could not abandon him from time or notice your disorder. Basically, all conversations between the two happen only inside the protagonist's head, but sometimes the narrator sees his persona as a different individual and at other times completely takes over Tyler's personality, while the latter knows that is just a fragment of a mind not conforming to its condition. Several tips are subtly given throughout of the movie about that fact. For example, in the opening scene, the narrator says in the bathroom scene, both share stories that have many aspects in common. Several tips are subtly given throughout of the movie about that fact. For example, in the opening scene, the narrator says in the bathroom scene, both share stories that have many aspects in common. When they take buses together, only Tyler pays for the ticket. Already at the hospital, he says, and arguing with Marla, the narrator repeats exactly what Tyler says. Another in front of other people just once emphatically. When they get involved in a car accident together, with two other members of the destruction project. This scene is important because at the end of it, Tyler, who is behind the wheel, emerges after the passenger side crash and pulls the driver's seat narrator. Another clue is in a commercial that we see it in the hotel where the storyteller is. Here we can see Tyler's interpreter Durden, Brad Pitt, in the right corner of the TV. It may mean that there is a person with Tyler Durden's physical appearance at real life in the movie universe. Someone who the protagonist probably saw at a glance on TV and unconsciously associated with a figure cool. Or maybe a metalinguistic joke by implying that the narrator's counterpart originated from actor Brad Pitt. When the narrator calls Tyler, and then Tyler returns, we can also give a tip regarding the illusion in which the protagonist is. When the storyteller calls Tyler, and then Tyler returns, we can also give a tip regarding the illusion in which the protagonist is, since the telephone booth does not receive calls. Since when they met, the character explained to the narrator about how it was possible about the apartment. Tyler says when you realize that all your things were destroyed due to explosion in their apartment. Narrator's first reaction is of concern, but is soon replaced for the feeling of freedom. After all, only after we lose everything is that we are really free to do whatever we want. Tyler, after detaching the storyteller from material goods that controlled it, begins devising his plan to destroy the system capitalist and free the people from their debts, believing he will be saving all those people. Devising his plan to destroy the system capitalist and free the people from their debts who expect to be led and do not take action on their own never. A generation without war and without purpose need a reason to go to the lines head on, and Tyler stimulates that feeling through the sense of belonging that attracts men to the leader of the fight. Someone who shares the same revolt and promotes hatred for capitalist society, who excluded them by giving them the opportunity to repay through violence. Violence emerges as a momentary form to make those men feel alive. As explained by the protagonist, the most important in fights is not winning or losing, and yes, the sensations they provoked: pain, adrenaline, power. It was as if they were sleeping all the time and just woke up at Fight Club, unloading all the accumulated anger and experiencing a kind of release. Even the chemical burn that Durden does in the storyteller hand is a symbol of its power, a permanent mark of its philosophy. We cannot occupy our mind with distractions. It is necessary to feel the pain and act on she. Its power, a permanent mark of its philosophy. We cannot occupy our mind with distractions. It is necessary to feel the pain and act upon she. Love subtly suggests that he is in love by him. The scene where Tyler says, and when the storyteller straightens his tie, Tyler's are moments that reinforce the possible Tyler's lifespan delivers. It is indeed the result of a deep admiration and blind. Another scene that demonstrates that the narrator is almost in love with Tyler is when he beats the blonde guy due to the jealousy that feel for the attention that Tyler in certain moment demonstrated by the subject. In fact, this act of extreme violence carries a message because in stating that I would like destroy something beautiful, we noticed a reference to the destruction project aimed at deconstructing society made up by exacerbated consumerism. But the truth is that the narrator is in love same is from Marla. That's why she's the one appears in your cave at any given time, only he doesn't immediately notice. By the way, this feeling that the narrator is in love with Tyler arises because this last one presents very similar traits. Marla's like smoking and not being afraid of death. Last one presents very similar traits. Marla's like smoking and not being afraid of death. With him, the narrator seeks intimacy, but avoids Marla Singer for noticing that she is very much like him. Comes from friendship with Tyler for being something more challenging in your view and less complicated. However, she is seductive to the protagonist, but he prefers to hold on to the excitement that when he becomes sexually involved with Marla. This not only reinforces the supposed passion that the protagonist feels for his own counterpart. How do you imply the ignored feelings that he feels for Marla? Only when Tyler says he needs to get rid of is that the narrator finally accepts, as it implies the ignored feelings he feels for Marla. Only when Tyler says he needs to get rid of her does the narrator finally accept his feelings for Marla and begin to diverge from the dangerous path he was following. On the other hand, Tyler is the subconscious, the representation of instincts without strings attached. Narrator's description of what Tyler did reinforces the idea of subconscious begs Tyler to stop. But as you calm down, you realize that there is no Tyler, that the gun is in your hands. So the protagonist points the gun at himself, same, and pulls the trigger, firing a bullet across your cheek. Tyler thinks the projectile was fired against the brain, so it dies, which here it is clear that the protagonist won his emerging personality following the philosophy Tyler's to be really free. After all, who is freer than a subject willing to take your own life? All the suffering to which the storyteller was being submitted led him to have an awakening Healthy, who took over her life for the first time. That way he couldn't see Tyler anymore with admiration, as a hero, and yes, as a sly villain and manipulator. Upon learning of this, he gained strength to destroy it before it happened, same with him, and with the people around him around. The moment you pull the trigger, the storyteller eliminates his ego, prepared to die in the process if needed. This act of bravery and responsibility allowed him to take control of the situation for yourself and get rid of everything that held you, including Tyler himself. The character finally hugged who he was, just like the selfish side of yourself that found that it had. He has reached a state of absolute serenity, where he conquered all his demons and lost the trace of insecurities. But of course, not everything is flowers. The character is seriously injured, failed to prevent Tyler's plan, and will probably be incriminated, and your romantic match is anything, but of course not everything is flowers. The character was seriously injured, couldn't stop Tyler's plan, and was probably blamed for it, besides his romantic match being anything but the typical maiden. However, he was at peace and may finally be reborn as his new self. After all, the narrator assimilated many of the Tyler's features, so much so that it's look in the basements of various buildings where records of credit were kept, an achievement that Tyler and his followers believed that would usher in a new era of balance in the basements of several buildings where credit records were kept, an achievement that Tyler and his followers believed would launch the beginning of a new era of financial equilibrium. Financial, but in the true ruins of human civilization as we know it, where the survivors of the eventual apocalypse would live their lives surrounded by collapsed monuments and obsolete to consumerism. Whereas dozens of organizations, independent anarchists of the Destruction Project, graduated from U.S. cities, all managed by space monkeys prepared to risk your lives for a new world. Is it valid to believe that these explosions are just the beginning of Armageddon visualized by Tyler with all the potential to permanently dismantle your lives for a new world?
Thank you for watching our video. Please show your love by liking, sharing with your friends and family, and leaving a comment. Don't forget to click on the bell icon to stay updated with our latest notifications. Stay connected.